Hi, Misha here, and this is something different. The Chinese aircraft carrier Liaoning. This is a 1/700 scale model from Forces of Valor. Just released March of 2020. And they released two versions. One from trials late in 2016. And this one here, modeled as it visited Hong Kong in 2017. This is China's first aircraft carrier, known to them as the Type 001. Although, if it looks like the Soviet, later Russian, carrier, Admiral Kuznetsov, that's because it was. Well, sort of. It started off life when its construction was ordered in 1983 in the Soviet Union, and the keel was laid down in December of 1985, and it was first commissioned as the Riga in 1988, although construction was still ongoing. But then in 1990-91, it was transferred to Ukraine when the Soviet Union fell apart, and renamed the Varyag. But Ukraine didn't have the money or wherewithal to finish it, so when it was a little under 70% complete, they started looking for people to sell it to, targeting India, Russia, but namely China, because China had been interested in getting into the aircraft carrier game for a long time. Now, the Admiral Kuznetsov class was considered an aircraft carrying cruiser. This was just because of treaty purposes. It needed to be considered a heavy cruiser, or at least not an aircraft carrier, so that it could transition between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, just because of treaties with Turkey and other Mediterranean powers. If it was considered an aircraft carrier, it would be limited to 15,000 tons. And this aircraft carrier, this warship, was well over 40,000 tons light and could be bumping 70,000 tons fully laden. So what they did, the Russians put cruise missiles, anti-shipping cruise missiles, known to the West as shipwreck missiles, on board to make it, well, a cruiser that just so happened to carry aircraft. This would be what the Su-27K, later known as the Su-33, and the MiG-29K would be developed to fly from. But it was not to be. And China was interested. They sent a delegation over in 1992 to check it out, and the delegation reported back a positive thing. They said that the Hulk was in good shape, but due to political machinations and goings-on at the time, the Chinese government decided not to purchase it. So basically it languished in the elements, half complete, rusting away throughout the 1990s. Then in 1998, it was sold off at auction and purchased by a, well, frankly, Chinese shell corporation purportedly out of Macau, but it was privately owned but operating under the behest of the People's Liberation Army Navy. Not exactly with government approval or disapproval. It ended up going for $20 million at auction, which would be hiked up to about $25 million after everything was added on. But hey, Ukraine did throw in a prototype Su-33 Sukhoi flanker, so there's that. And then, beginning in June of 2000, plans were made to tow this ostensibly to Macau, where it was claimed it was going to be rebuilt as a luxury liner, floating casino, tourist carrier. It didn't really fool anyone, it was just a story, but people in the West figured it was going to China, but they also figured the hull had deteriorated. And it had been left in the elements for over half a decade. And definitely wasn't in great shape. Now, ostensibly, it didn't even have the engines, although it turns out it did. They'd just been removed and packed in grease. But before much could happen, Turkey objected to it being towed through its waters. And so it essentially just circled around the Black Sea for over a year. It wasn't until August of 2001 that China and Turkey finally came to an agreement, and the ship's voyage would continue. Not uneventfully, though. In fact, a sailor lost his life at one point. But finally, by February, it reached Chinese waters. And then on March 3rd of 2002, it docked at the Chinese port and naval shipyard of Dalian. And eventually, steps would be taken to restore, refurbish, and upgrade it. The process really began in 2005. It would not end until 2011. And the Chinese really rebuilt the whole thing, stripping off all the old rust, putting new paint down. They never did install the cruise missile tubes, which gave it more space, especially below decks, for munitions, storage, fuel, even more hangar space for aircraft. And this was at the time it would be redesignated as the Liaoning, named after the Chinese province. And that Su-33 prototype that China got a hold of would actually be turned into the aircraft that would first operate from it, the J-15, which I have done a video on. Finally, in 2011, the Chinese government acknowledged what they were doing, that they had this vessel. They claimed it was being restored for research and scientific purposes and training. And then it would begin sea trials. It would actually go through quite a long range of sea trials, beginning in June, July of 2011, kind of culminating in a very long series of trials a year later, lasting nearly a month. The original Russian carrier could endure the seas for about 45 days. So towards the end, the Chinese really were kind of pushing the boundaries. And then after sea trials were at least preliminarily over, they began weapons testing, loading the first J-15s on board at the end of the summer of 2012, and then they started practicing takeoff and landings towards the end of that year. They also started loading on missile batteries, anti-aircraft defense, but really the aircraft defense were its fighters. In 2013, development continued, and practicing and training continued. Actually, some observers from the Brazilian Naval Fleet Air Arm would be on hand to help China practice with their first carrier. In 2014, there was the big news story in the West that 2 pilots were killed due to J-15 accidents. The Chinese denied this, saying that the deaths, while they happened, had nothing to do with that. But progress continued. They had originally projected this would be ready, fully in service by 2017. They beat this slightly. In September of 2016, it was declared operationally ready. It was transferred to the People's Liberation Navy, and then officially commissioned on September 25th, 2016. And at the end of that year, it would make its first fleet exercise and another training cruise. It would actually pass through some Japanese islands. 2017, as I said, it would visit Hong Kong. And then in April of 2018, it would take place in a live fire exercise with the rest of the Chinese Navy, which involved over 75 aircraft and nearly 50 surface vessels and submarines. This was when Taiwan protested, saying it was kind of military aggression, flexing its power, and not saying they were wrong, but anyway. After this, it would go back to its, what I'd consider its home port for a 6-month refit. The first it had since it started trials in 2012, basically correcting things, much like the Russian Admiral Kuznetsov class. It too has had problems with its steam boilers and turbines and just general engines, so part of it would be to correct this. And then towards the end of January 2019, it would again take to the waves. And actually, the lessons learned with this vessel would lead to the first all-Chinese carrier, the Type 001A, later redesignated Type 002, which was laid down in 2017 and actually was commissioned just a little bit ago in December of 2019 is the Shenglong. So now China has 2 carriers. This really has been used as more of a training, experience building, practice building carrier. While it is a large vessel, it's 999 feet long. It can carry up to 40 aircraft, although typically its complement is 24 to 26 J-15s, and then a mix of Z-18 and Z-9 helicopters. It has a crew, if fully staffed, of just a hair under 2,000, including over 600 members of the air group. It has over 3,900 rooms. Max speed is somewhere between 35 and 37 miles per hour. It has 3 fixed propellers, fixed pitch. And it operates using steam catapults and the ski ramp in the front, much like the Russian and even British carriers. The ski ramp or ski jump has the advantage of being able to operate relatively large aircraft from a relatively small deck. But the flip side to that, when launched from the ski ramp, the J-15s do have limited range, endurance, and weapons loadout. So typically, they will only carry 2 to 4 missiles, although the aircraft themselves can carry more. And the more fuel they have on board, of course, the more limited it is to that. It is better suited to helicopters, of course, because, well, helicopters, they can vertically take off and land. It's interesting that they don't have something like a Harrier, that they've gone the Sukhoi route. And again, it doesn't have the cruise missiles. Of course, it doesn't have any guns. It does have modern radar and anti-aircraft missiles. And the more recent retrofit or refit has changed things up a bit, including with the superstructure. I haven't really done any models or any videos on ship models, but I need to correct that. I actually do have a few. I like the 1/700 scales from mostly Forces of Valor, although Hobbymaster has done a few as well. You can find more in the 1,000 to 1,250 scale range from even places like Eagle Moss, but to me those are just so small. This is already difficult for me because of how fine the pieces are. Luckily, the Forces of Valor polymer plastic is pretty resilient. And the hull is metal, so that's nice. And when they do their carriers, they really get quite a bit with it. Now you do have to glue on the propellers and the rudders, which I haven't glued on yet. I've just stuck them on and I'm actually impressed they've hung on to the video. But typically I will glue them. They actually even supply you with, it's kind of thoughtful of them. If I can find it here. Here it is. When you buy their ship models, they even give you a little pack of glue. And it's aptly Chinese super glue. But super glue sets a little fast for me, so I like to use real modeling glue. You also get these kind of neat stands that let you display a helicopter and an aircraft kind of in a flight mode. I just haven't had a chance to put them together yet. So you can put one of the aircraft in a stand off the ski ramp, making it look like it's taking off. And you can also put one helicopter coming up like it's flying up. You get 8 J-15s, 4 with their wings deployed, ready to go, and 4 with their wings folded, like they're coming from the below deck. I've got them on the elevators here. And the elevators do move. You can station them up or down, which is neat. You get 3 helicopters, 2 with their blades unfolded and 1 Again, to sit on an elevator with the blades folded up. Pretty neat. And you even get a couple of little trucks. Tow trucks, and I think one tow truck and one fueler, and they are tiny, like half the size of a largest grain of rice. You can also display the catapults up or down. Have all these little pieces here, and there's a few of these like that. I don't know what these little things are yet. You guys can let me know. Here's the catapult bits. Yeah, this little things. That's our stand. It just came in the mail, so I haven't had a lot of time with it. It also comes with the typical Forces of Valor display, like if you want to put it in here to have it at the water line. Pretty neat. It's just plastic, but you can even lock it to the thing if you want. It comes with two little clamps to display, like if it's sailing. Or you get this decent stand that is actually metal for the stand part, and the fake part here is faux wood plastic. Has the name, kind of a classic nautical look to it. It's actually a pretty neat, pretty detailed model. The other thing I wish, I was telling my wife, the aircraft just sit. See? Kind of wish they were metal or had like a tiny magnet in them so you could just stick them to the deck, because I'm not sure how to keep them from just sliding around. But they are very nicely detailed considering the microscopic scale. Little landing gear, little missiles. Close your eyes and smile. Yeah, that's a deep cut reference. If anyone gets that, tell me. I will be mightily impressed. Here is the same J-15 with wings folded. When I did a video on this, I showed you the Air Force One model, and one reason I bought the Air Force One over the Hobbymaster, aside from being cheaper, it has folding wings. I just think that's kind of integral to the design. Oops. See, I know I was going to do that at least once. I was telling you about plastic being durable. I need to glue those, though. Anyway. Oh, it's daylight savings time. I went from having an hour this evening to none, which means I really shouldn't be doing this video, because I'm going to not get to bed till very late now, but yeah, screw it. But, yeah. Here's our elevator. Pretty neat. I'll just put the helicopter on the back deck. Yes, I know these aren't in the right positions, but just putting them on so I could do a video real quick. What is this, guys? It's a little tower. You can tell me. Just sits on the back there. If I know exactly how to put it on, I'll glue it. What I might do, once I kind of figure out where each of these really go, probably will take just a tiny dot of white tack and stick them on with that. I don't know. Little Harbin helicopter. But yeah, it's a very large model. Even though it's 1/700th scale, this model ends up being about 17 inches long and also very wide. So it's a good, impressive size. The US's Enterprise carrier is also in this line, and it's even longer. And there's also the British HMS Hood from World War II. They also do the Bismarck, the Tirpitz, the USS Arizona, the Missouri, or Missouri as some people say, and the Yamato, which is actually how I met Pete at Pete's Collectibles, because he was one of the few people that had the Yamato still in stock a few years ago, and didn't want an arm and a leg for it. And kind of got me into these. Actually, this model just came from Pete. He gave me the choice of the A or the B. Like I said, they do two versions. The A is extremely similar, and the A is from 2016, and the B is from 2017. The reason I went with the B, the A seems to come with the aircraft, all wings, folded down, ready to go, and the B has a mix of wings up, wings down, and I definitely thought that was a neater option, so you could put some on your elevators or just lined up at the back of the flight deck, which will probably be ultimately how I do them. But yeah, I just wanted to give a little look. China's first aircraft carrier, and one of two in service at the moment, and it started off as a Soviet aircraft carrier. I've heard talk that Forces of Valor might do the Admiral Kuznetsov. If they did, it would be very similar to this. It would just have the cruise missiles. Although recently, it's been reported that even Russia kind of did the same thing and removed them for additional storage. Unfortunately, ship models don't sell very well. Hobbymaster dipped their toes into it with the missile frigate that they put out a few versions of, but they don't seem to be wanting to do more. So people go out and buy these, so someone else will make the larger scale aircraft carriers and things. I would love to see more support ships made, destroyers, cruisers, heck, even submarines. Atlas Editions does do subs, but they're in 1/350 scale, so they would not be to scale with the carriers. And Eagle Moss does a ton of cruisers, but they're in the 1,250 scale, which is just a little small for my taste. Kind of more of a Micro Machines Ahoy type thing. I'm sure I'll revisit this again as I get it set up properly. I just wanted to show you today because it came in and was neato. Actually, I do like ships quite a bit. Funny fact, this thing is 305 meters long, which is pretty much the exact length of the refit USS Enterprise NCC 1701 or 1701A. So hey, Star Trek fans, this is pretty much the size of the Enterprise. But I definitely do like ships. There just aren't many models to get into. And aircraft carriers are great because it's ships and planes. And I really do think the planes that Forces of Valor ships with these, for the size, I mean, they're painted. They have ordnance. I mean, they're pretty dang neat. Alright, I guess I better call it a night. It's ceased getting late, now it's just getting early. If you could like, share, and subscribe, and if you haven't, check out my previous video on the J11, J15, and J16 fighters. And I have more Chinese fighters that I'll be bringing you very soon as well. Any questions, feel free to post them. As always, I appreciate it. This is Misha, and I'll see you again very soon next time.